Hi. In the last video on Acts, I shared with you a discovery of a misapplied scripture that I remember using as a proof text when I was a witness. That of cutting off Israel from, the focus point of message going out. In Acts 13:46, the verse that says, "We turn to the nations," in the New World Translation. I remember it being used that way. Most Bibles would have, "We turn to the Gentiles," instead of the nations. But no matter, there was no acknowledgement as a witness to the context in which that statement is made. It's spoken to a specific group of Jews at a specific location. Chapter 14 then opens with Paul and Barnabas in a new region, and again starting at a synagogue in the city that they're visiting. So right after that statement, they visit another synagogue. They're still going to the Jew first. The verses that follow 14:1 indicate a mixed reaction to message of the apostles. Some believing Jews and some believing Gentiles, and some unbelieving Jews and unbelieving Gentiles. We pick up with Paul and Barnabas in Lystra at verse 8. And then we have a bit of Paul's public preaching or speaking in verses 15 to 17. But for continuity and setting, I'd like to read verses 8 to 18. And in Lystra, a certain man without strength in his feet was sitting, a cripple from his mother's womb, who had never walked. This man heard Paul speaking. Paul, observing him intently and seeing that he had faith to be healed, said with a loud voice, "Stand up straight on your feet." And he leaped and walked. Now when the people saw what Paul had done, they raised their voices, saying, in the Laconian language, "The gods have come down to us in the likeness of men." And Barnabas they called Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. Then the priest of Zeus, whose temple was in front of their city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates, intending to sacrifice with the multitudes. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard this, they tore their clothes and ran in among the multitude, crying out and saying, "Men, why are you doing these things? We also are men with the same nature as you, and preach to you that you should turn from these useless things to the living God, who made heaven and earth, the sea, and all things that are in them, who in bygone generations allowed all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless, he did not leave himself without witness, in that he did good, gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness." And with these sayings they could scarcely restrain the multitudes from sacrificing to them. So this is a message to non-Jewish people. And he doesn't quote scripture, and they have no Hebrew scriptures to be witness to about the coming of the Messiah. So Paul points to the Creator and to creation as their witness to serve God, to love God. And it reminded me, the way he spoke to them, it reminded me of Paul's breakdown of humanity in Romans chapters 1 to 3. Those chapters were very important to me in understanding when I left the witnesses, how God reaches people. No one has excuse, with or without the Bible. We all have enough for recognition of God. The gospel is brought, then, to a people without the word, as Paul describes in Ephesians 2, also a people without hope in the world. And that's what the gospel was going to provide for them. Next time we will go to Paul preaching to another non-Jewish audience in Athens. I'm going to link to a video that I did based on readings from Dr. Bergman's book on Jehovah's Witnesses and mental health problems. This one is called Religion Doesn't Create Guilt. J.W. Guilt Intensified by Graceless, Unforgiving Org Policies.